I'd like you to expand upon the idea of Antichrist, if you would.
Why?
Because it's something that I've been very curious about.
Why? What does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me? The only description I've heard is being that'll be in the world that will, and now I know why I'm asking, that will say the words of a spiritual manner that I am enjoy being in, and will say the words and appear to be someone that you could listen to or learn from, but that there's something that's not quite right. And I don't know whether I've run into that in little ways and want to know in bigger
Well, we
ways.
would say to you that any time you are feeling negative emotion, you are in the act of being that yourself.
Uh-huh. Okay.
In other words, when you think of that which many understand as Christ consciousness, and we have to say to you that whether you call it Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or Charlie consciousness, that it is source energy that some physical human has managed to find connection to, you see. And so when people offer the idea of Antichrist, the context in which it is usually offered is, we have this truth that we believe, and it's wrapped around the spiritual one that we are referring to as Christ. And anything that disagrees with that is Antichrist. And the thing that is so distorted about that whole picture is that, and we'll offer this softly, no, we won't. The greatest demonstration that we have ever witnessed of Antichrist comes from Christians trying to defend Christ. In their pushing against the other things that they believe detract from it or might damage it, they get so disconnected from the energy that is it, that in that moment, they are it, you see. And so, this isn't just one word that is offered from one group of people. This is a concept that humans have discovered to express their feeling of vulnerability in the world of assertion that they've come to believe in that really does not exist. When we say to you, there is a source of well-being, we mean that there is a source of well-being. And sometimes you allow it to flow, and sometimes you call that Christ. And sometimes you don't allow that to flow, and it doesn't really matter what you call it. But there is not a source of good and a source of evil. There is not one who will appear as you believe Christ appeared or will appear again. Every now and again, Esther will see the sun making its way through the clouds in a very dramatic way. And she will say to Jerry, that's the sunbeam that Christ will return on. Because she saw a picture of that somewhere when she was really little. And then she always laughs about it as she brings around her old concepts of all of that and what she now understands, which is that energy was always available even before the one who was known as Christ. It is still available even after the one. It does not only come on that name or on that stream. It's available to all. But there are many, not just those who espouse the words of Christianity. There are many, under many different labels, who are certain that there is an anti-good in the world. And we say all it is individual who in any moment, for any reason, does not allow the fullness of who he is to flow. So then when you realize that every thought that has ever been thought still exists, and that law of attraction is a sort of manager of that, then you can realize how there could be lots of spin-off of man's conscious thought about fearful things, about vulnerable things, about things that he feels he cannot control. And when you understand that law of attraction is sort of gathering all those together, that there's a sort of a coalescing of those things, it is not hard to understand how someone in a very exaggerated place of disconnection might be a vibrational match to a whole big wad of that energy that has been gathered by a whole... In other words, we've said before that when the young person or the old person takes his gun and goes into a school or into a body of people and in his strong disconnection starts firing and shooting others, that he is in essence channeling a whole much bigger block of thought than his personal experience really deserves, but somehow by his attention to the subject of the injustices that he's worried about, he's managed to tap in to a great big piece of that, and through him it comes. And when that happens, people who don't understand law of attraction or energy or thought or the way it moves through this universe say that is a sort of anti-good. And we say everyone is a little bit of that. As we said to you earlier, anytime you're not allowing who you really are to flow, you are that. But there will be no one who comes forth who has amassed power of evil who will have the ability to assert into your experience. Just like there is no one like the one you call as Christ who will come forth and save you all from that which does not need to be saved. Both the Christ and the Antichrist have been dramatically distorted in your physical environment.
Okay, well, I embarrassed myself mightily about a week before the World Trade Center situation happened. But I'd like your feedback on situations so I don't beat myself up too much. I was given what I thought was some information from a friend, from a government-related person, actually a lawyer, a very high government lawyer, who had spoken with a friend of mine, telling her, she told me, that a lot of changes were happening in the U.S. government, would be happening, that the Federal Reserve would be changing to the gold and silver standard, that those changes were happening and would be announced soon, that President Bush would resign, that the tax structure would be mightily simplified. All of this made me very excited. These were all things that I very much wanted. And so I called everybody I was close to. I was kind of showing off because I love being the first person to tell people things. I just really like doing that. And then this happened. And I would love to know that this person was right, that she was told correctly.
Wrap it around what you heard then, what you know now, and what are you getting at?
Well, I sort of think it's probably true. It's just that I'm not getting a lot of backup for it. I mean, it's like nobody else thinks that way. You know, it feels kind of uncomfortable to feel like I know something, but not really be able to talk about it to people close to me, like family. They just think I'm way out in left field. It just feels really weird.
Well, now give us more description about what you heard was going to happen that you wanted to happen.
That the tax structure would be immensely transformed in a very radical way.
Yes.
That the Federal Reserve would disappear, would change to gold and silver standard. That a lot of our government leaders were there illegally, and there would be a re-election, and because of that, President Bush had agreed to step down, to resign. In light of all of this, and that there was a secret bill passed in Congress that they weren't allowed to talk about, and so if you ever saw NESARA on the net, if you go to the net at www.nesara.com, they will deny that bill was actually passed, but she was told that it actually did pass, and that it would be announced shortly. But at the time that it was to be announced, this happened instead, bringing us to believe that it was an inside job to stop that from happening.
Well, I want to talk here for just a little while and bring all of this back into a place that helps you to find your center about it. Because you heard us say earlier that whenever anything happens, it is always the culmination of a whole lot of intentions. And when you look around at people who are benefiting from anything that happens like this, someone said that your current administration is receiving such extraordinary benefit from this upheaval that it could not have been better if they had planned it themselves. And when Esther heard that, it was very unsettling to her, and we said, they're not planning it themselves in that nefarious way. It is that all of the intentions that everyone is holding always come into the mix and result in these unfoldings of world events. As you speak here, we can feel the discord sort of rippling across the room. First of all, because nobody wants to think these kinds of thoughts, and we agree that they are not the kinds of thoughts that are connecting in nature. But the most significant thing that we want to give you about it, and it comes back to what we talked about earlier, about that idea of chaos. If you get together with a room full of people who have had any positions in the government of any kind, you would hear so many stories of inside stuff that it would make your head spin and you would totally lose your place of connection. And we want to remind you of this most extraordinary and significant fact. As important as your government thinks that it is to you, it is law of attraction that is the manager of the way things are unfolding, you see. So, in truth, elections are insignificant because the mass consciousness is casting its votes at a truly grassroots level. And source energy is answering those requests at a truly grassroots level. And someone would say, well, that's very Pollyanna. And we say, Pollyanna lived happily ever after. In other words, we would, if we were standing in your physical shoes, do anything and everything that we could do to bring ourselves to the place of feeling good about whatever it is that we are giving our attention to. We watch some expressing patriotism, and we know that in that expressing of patriotism, many are utterly connected to source energy in the doing so. It feels so lovely to really be proud of something. But we've also noticed a difference. Using the same word of patriotism, some are in alignment with source energy and some are pushing very hard against something else. Esther, driving the monster bus the other day, sang and sang and sang. Jerry finally moved himself as far away as he could, which isn't very far. As Esther is singing God Bless America, and then she got it in her head to go through the alphabet and bless Bulgaria and Czechoslovakia and Denmark and England and France and Germany and Hungary. In other words, she went all the way through the alphabet. And sometimes she'd go through the alphabet again and again and again and again and again and again as she is wanting this feeling of well-being and wanting to hold oh so many countries in her gaze as she is allowing the way she is feeling as she is singing to flow through her. So what we're getting at, there are all kinds of facts that would upset you if you were privy to them. Being privy to them doesn't help you, and not being privy to them doesn't hurt you, because well-being is the order of the day, you see. One day, something happened. It was an international event. And Esther got a very clear hit on what had really happened. And she asked us, and we agreed with her, that what she was receiving and the actual fact of the event were one and the same. And they were very different from what was being spoken. And Esther said, Abraham, shouldn't somebody tell somebody? And we said, what would that accomplish? In other words, play it out of your mind both ways. What serves to connect the masses and what serves to disconnect the masses? And Esther said, but in ignorance, isn't there danger? And we said, in ignorance, there is usually more bliss than danger. Because if you are not focused upon the specifics of things that disconnect you, you're not disconnected. And if you are not disconnected, then you continue to thrive, you see. Do we think that there are government conspiracies that are afoot to undermine your government? Yes, we think they are everywhere. We think that they're endless people that would surprise you, that have personal interests or personal complaints. In other words, it is one of the reasons that your nation does as well as it does, because there is such diversity, such variety in what is wanted, and nobody really gets a very strong foot. The pendulum swings so rapidly back and forth that nothing gets very far off before it swings back the other way, you see. And so we would not spend any time at all trying to uncover things that make you feel awful when you get the first little whiff of them.